There it goes. We're in chapter 12, and just a few short verses for us today. Chapter 12, verses 35 through 40. It says, "Be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. Be like those who are waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet, so that they may open the door for him as soon as he comes and knocks. Blessed are those slaves whom the master finds alert when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will fasten his belt and have them sit down to eat, and he will come and serve them. If he comes during the middle of the night or near dawn and finds them so, blessed are those slaves. But know this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. So I know that's sometimes a stretch, but I think you can do it. By show of hands, would you show me who likes surprises? Anybody? Okay. Oh, good. Okay, about a 50-50 split. That always feels nice. We've got some that are real excited about that, others who are not. I always say I love surprises, that they're my favorite. During college, we did this, I don't know how nobody saw it coming, but we did this strand of surprise birthday parties for friends, but my birthday's in June, so I never got to have one, and I was really sad about that, because I love surprises so much. Even if I couldn't have one, though, I wanted everyone else to have one. They were always hilarious and super fun, and we usually did them off of an actual birthday. Maybe that's why nobody saw them coming. But I realized, as I was thinking about what it means to like surprises and why I like them, that I don't actually always like them. We have a 4-year-old, and sometimes she really enjoys sneaking up on me, coming around a corner without me hearing her, and it makes my heart stop every single time. When she's trying to sneak up, and if you've ever watched a child try to sneak up on somebody, she's super loud, right? She's laughing the whole time, and she's running into stuff because she thinks it's so hilarious. But when she's not trying to, it's like she's walking on air. I can't hear her coming for anything, and she'll just appear behind me or beside me or behind a door or something like that. And then you also have heard now about our dog Miles. He does the same thing. He's real small, but his pitter patters are clear as day coming down our tile hallway. But again, every once in a while, all of a sudden, he'll be at my feet, or I'll trip over him or something like that. And it scares me every time. At this point, it shouldn't, but it still does. So in general, I love surprises, but there are some that I don't enjoy quite so much. And then I think about what about the times that we know to prepare, the times that we get to think ahead and prepare for something that's coming. Like when you're having company over, perhaps, how do you get ready? I think everyone's a little different in that. So think for yourself, how do you get ready when you're preparing for someone to come over? You might set aside some time in the week ahead or the day before. You're going to tidy the living room and vacuum the floors, clean the bathrooms, or if you can't find the time or are a really good procrastinator, you find the last 30 minutes before they come and you throw everything into the closets and just hope they don't notice the dog food on the floor or the crumbs or whatever. I'm hoping there's somebody else that would raise their hand to that too, but I won't ask you to. It can't just be me. The passage here in Luke is so short, but it's really clear for us. Jesus is reminding listeners to set aside the time, to be diligent in preparing, to be focused on who is coming, even if we don't know the when. To be focused on who is coming, to prepare well as we wait. Here are 2 words that I want us to think about that will help us wait well. Waiting expectantly and waiting faithfully. We're going to look at expectantly first. We do a lot of passive waiting in our lives. In our just every single day this happens. And it becomes a default mode of operating if we're not careful, right? Think about all the places you wait. You wait in lines, you wait at stoplights, you wait on hold with customer service. And in those moments, you have zero power to make anything happen differently. Same thing, another thing our 4-year-old always does, she'll be sitting in the back seat and we're at a stoplight and she'll say, go, 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 go. It's like, Annabeth, I cannot go. This is how the road works. I have zero power to change the moment or to move things along. And even for those of us, and I think she's going to be the same way, who like to be in control of every situation, this powerlessness can become habitual. It can dull our sense of expectation. I know the light's going to turn green, but I don't sit there just really expectantly waiting for it to. I just wait until it does. But Jesus tells us clearly to wait as if we know who is coming, even if we don't know the when. Waiting expectantly means that we're watching for God's activity, not just passing the time until it happens. It means we're engaged with how the Spirit is moving and working around us, and that we're choosing to join in that work, knowing that every time we share the gospel, we assist in the work of extending God's reign. Do you know the feeling of expectant waiting? Can you kind of summon that in your brain? Is there something maybe now that you're expectantly waiting for, or do you remember the last time that you had that feeling? I remember the Christmas that I was 9 years old. My brother and I, the presents that we received, they seemed to have a theme, which was completely unheard of. We're so different, especially as children. We would never get things that were similar to each other. And so I didn't know what the theme was necessarily. I couldn't quite tie it together. I was 9. But I remember thinking something is just a little weird about this. But then all the presents were open, and my parents kind of left the room for a minute. We were sitting there playing with what we had, and they came back in with this giant box. Ooh, this never happens. Something really great is about to happen. And they handed it to us, and it was really light. Everything about this is so strange. And we open it up, and there's 2 pair, one of Minnie ears and one of Mickey ears. My brother and I still have no idea what's happening. And then our parents, seeing that we're not putting these pieces together, say, "We're going to Disney World." It's like, oh, great moment for 9, and he would have been 11 years old, right? Everybody's so excited. But then we learned we're going in a few months. Not like we're leaving tomorrow or here's the tickets. We're going in a few months. And I know my parents were pumped about this. They had saved, they had done all the things that now as an adult I understand. But how does a 9-year-old wait 3 months to go? But I had never been so excited about going anywhere, and I thought it was going to be awful to wait, but it turned out that it wasn't. It wasn't as difficult as I expected because I was excited, and we all were, and again, my brother and I being so different, very few things we agreed on, but that we did. We knew we were both excited, and we also had things along the way that we could do to prepare for the trip. I didn't just have to sit and wait for those 3 months to pass. I could be active and expectant in my waiting. And I can still I can still channel that feeling. I hope you get an idea of what that feels like as well. The Psalms, one of which we read this morning and others as well, give us a great framework for active waiting, for not just sitting and passing the time, but for doing something in the moments. Psalm 5 says, "Give ear to my words, O Lord, give heed to my sighing. Listen to the sound of my cry, my King and my God, for to you I pray. O Lord, in the morning you hear my voice. In the morning I plead my case to you and watch." Now, the psalmist here isn't waiting for something really exciting except deliverance, so it's a very different situation. But the psalmist isn't just sitting and waiting. The psalmist is praying. The psalmist is crying out. The psalmist is engaging with God. Psalm 25, which we read together. "To you, O Lord, I lift my soul. I trust in you. Make your ways known to me. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth." You hear all of this action language in this. "For I wait all day long." And even through this, the psalmist is doing something. Many of the Psalms that we read are a plea for deliverance of some sort, sometimes from an external enemy, and sometimes, if we read real carefully, we can see it's from an internal struggle. And what often accompanies that cry for help is a couple of things. First, it's a declaration of assurance that God will deliver. I know, God, that you're coming. I know, God, that you'll save me. I know that this is going to happen. And then after making that declaration, the author continues to wait in expectant hope. So if you're in a place today that you need some inspiration to wait expectantly, if it's just been too long that you've had to wait, I'd encourage you to make it a practice over days, weeks, months, whatever it takes, to read through the Psalms, to have a partner in that expectant hope. You are not alone in that. Another example that we read is found in James chapter 5. It says, "Be patient, therefore, beloved, until the coming of the Lord. The farmer waits for the precious crop from the earth, being patient with it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also must be patient. Strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near." I love this image of a farmer waiting. And for me, it's helpful to show that we're not sitting on our hands, right? You're not just idly waiting for something to happen, but hard work is coming. This is what this time is about. Hard at work, sowing the seeds of God's kingdom, cultivating the land, tending to what grows, and knowing that the joyful day of harvest will come. My grandfather is a farmer, and I have never met anyone who believes in the value of hard work the way he does. From the time I was so little, it was the one value that he tried to impress consistently upon us. Working on a farm is hard work. It's difficult, it's strenuous, it's full of setbacks and challenges. And so we know that expectantly waiting for the Lord will not necessarily be easy. There will be difficult relationships that we're called into. There will be messy situations. There will be a lot of things we'd rather not do, or a lot of things that aren't comfortable. We'll have to be honest about ourselves, about our shortcomings and our own baggage. We'll have to engage in conflict in a way that brings people together rather than repels them. This is the work of expectant waiting. In Galatians 5, Paul writes, "For through the Spirit, by faith, we eagerly wait for the hope of righteousness." Later in the chapter, Paul sums up what this means and what it looks like. He says, "The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And there is no law against such things, and those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live by the Spirit, let us also be guided by the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, competing against one another, envying one another." To live expectantly, waiting for Christ, engaging in the activity of God looks like that list. When we live this way, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, generosity, faithfulness, and self-control, those things will be the byproduct of our choices and our actions. And that list, it's so important to remember, it's not a pick and choose list. It's not the fruits of the Spirit, it is the fruit. It is one fruit that the Spirit leads us to live by. Even in the midst of this hard work of expectant waiting, when we're led by the Spirit, that's when we see these results that Paul writes about. So in addition to teaching us to wait expectantly, these passages remind us that waiting isn't a waste of time. It's in the waiting that we're growing, that we're learning, that we're being transformed. Another way to put this is that during that time, we're in a liminal space. We all have liminal seasons in our lives, and I think that the more I think about it, I think we're more often in liminal space than we're not. When I think through the times of my life that I have felt settled and sure, and I know what I'm doing and where I am and where I'm going, those seasons are much shorter and fewer than the times that I'm not sure, than the times that I'm wondering or asking or looking for where that next place is that God's leading. Liminal space is the space between. It's when one season has ended, but the next one hasn't really begun yet. It's not fully here. You can think of it as a threshold of a doorway. When you're in or when you're going through the doorway, you're not completely out of the room that you're leaving or completely in the room that you are headed to, but you're in between. Liminal waiting spaces can make us uncomfortable or anxious because they're the seasons that we're almost forced to put down our guard, and that God invites us into the kind of work that can only be done when we're willing to be vulnerable. Can you think of a time in your life that you may have been or that you would have considered a liminal space? How did you feel in that time? What emotions came up? Did you learn anything in particular? And I wonder, would you do that season differently if you had the chance? Liminal space isn't a waste, but it's a time of preparation. We experience, I was thinking about this earlier this week, especially in the summer when it's really hot, there's a really easy physical way to experience a liminal space. I was going in and out of buildings, running errands all day, one day this week, and every time I went into a building, it's like 90 degrees outside, but you feel that rush of cold air, right, as the air conditioning from the building hits you, and your body's trying to prepare to leave the heat and come into the air conditioning. And then the same thing when you're leaving, you feel the wave of heat as you are in that doorway, leaving the air conditioning and coming out into the heat. It may be a small, silly example, but it's one of the easiest, tangible ways I can think to express a liminal space, that in-between is preparing you for something new. And sometimes you still want to stay where you are. I don't always want to go out into the 90-degree weather. I'd like to stay in the air conditioning, but that's not where I'm headed next. That won't get me to where I'm going. That won't help me complete the task or grow in the way that I need to. These seasons help us prepare physically, mentally, spiritually. And when we engage in that work of preparation, when we don't try to stay where we were, but are willing to take those steps forward, we're doing that work of waiting expectantly. And we also want to wait faithfully. This means that while we're waiting, we're attending to the work that we've been called to. We're not just watching for God's activity. Oh, I see good things happening over there. Oh, wow, those people are really engaged. That's great. But we're seeing what we've been called to. We're listening intently to find our place in the work and then taking that action. God calls us all to different work in the building of the kingdom, and that work looks different at different times in our lives, but there's always kingdom work for us to do. And I find that one of the biggest barriers to that faithful waiting is distraction. Sometimes this is one of my biggest struggles in my own work, in my own life and faith as well. I really like to jump from one activity to the next. I'm usually reading multiple books at a time, or on average, I have about 30 tabs open on my computer because I just like to jump around. My husband gives me a really hard time about this, but it's okay. It's just how my brain operates sometimes. But it can also be a problem. Sometimes it makes me lose kind of where I am, or I forget, wait, where was that information that I needed? During the season of shelter in place and global pandemic, I learned that I use distraction as a coping mechanism. When I'm bored or when I'm trying to avoid dealing with something, I'll instinctively just turn my attention to almost anything else to avoid dealing with whatever I'm avoiding. I'll instinctively just go anywhere. Digging into this tendency, I found that it's often right when I'm on the verge of real progress that my brain looks for something else to focus on. And I think that progress that I'm on the verge of, it kind of points to why that happens. That progress might mean that I'm learning something new. It might mean that I have to adjust my behavior about something. It might mean that I'm opening myself up to a new and deeper relationship with someone who could hurt me later on. It might mean that I'm taking an opportunity that I can only see part of now, and I'm having to give up some control because I can't see the whole thing. All of those situations can be the byproduct of hard work that we are called to attend to, not to just kind of see and leave off to the side. But our brains are programmed to try to keep us safe. They're trying to keep everything the same way that they are, stick with the status quo, fight those actions or decisions that mess that up. But God has taught me through this work that indulging in those distractions is not what it means to wait faithfully. Because the gospel isn't about the status quo. Jesus didn't come to earth, live, teach, and die so that everything could remain the same. Nothing we do here would make sense if that was true. Jesus came to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, release to the prisoners, to comfort all who mourn. And Jesus came to call us to that work as well. So hear in Jesus' words that when he comes back, there's a celebration. There will be joy all around the room. The servants or the slaves, they're not afraid of the master coming back or trembling when he does. They are expectantly and faithfully waiting. And I can't help but notice this language that Jesus uses as he's giving these instructions. Think now forward to the Last Supper, the way that Jesus fastens his belt, and goes around and serves them. That's what he's pointing to in this passage, to say, when you are the servants that wait faithfully, that wait expectantly, that know that the master is coming back, this is what's waiting for you. It's not, it's something we want to be ready for, that we don't want to be asleep for. So what's the work? What's the work for us to do? How do we share this? As we wait expectantly and faithfully, think about who is oppressed. Who is oppressed that you can bring good news to? Who is brokenhearted? Who is mourning that you can comfort? How can you proclaim liberty and release to captives and to the prisoners? We aren't called to stand and wait around. We're not called to sit on our hands and just hope that it happens soon. But we get to be the hands and feet. We get to be the pieces of the kingdom that bring God's reign more fully into focus. And we don't have to do it alone. We know we're led by the Spirit, and we know that we do this in community. If there's something you're ever really excited about, that you really are just sure that God is calling you to, call someone who's sitting next to you in a pew today and say, hey, this is really cool. Do you want to come with me? And just see what God does with that. When we invite each other into that work too, it only gets better. It only gets stronger. It only helps further God's kingdom more. Would you pray with me? God, waiting is really hard. It's not our favorite thing to do. It's often our least favorite thing to do. So we ask that you would show us the way, that you would help us practice in small ways, maybe at first, to help us build up that muscle of what it looks like and how to wait expectantly and faithfully. We know it won't always be easy, but we know that with your guidance, with your grace and your mercy, that you'll lead us in the right direction. Help us to listen for your voice. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.